What's up, everybody? Welcome back to the channel. Today I'm making one of my favorite things on the grill, barbecue ribs. There's a bunch of different ways you can make them, and I'll show you my kind of go-to method for making these, where they're super tender, still have a little bite to them, and are absolutely delicious. Plus, we're gonna finish them off with our homemade barbecue sauce. So let's get started. One of the most frequently asked questions that I get is, what is my favorite thing to make? And, I like a whole bunch of different things, but ribs are probably my favorite thing to make on the grill, and they're actually super easy to make, especially with your own sauce. You can really kind of get them exactly how you like them. So I will show you my go-to method for making ribs. So today I've got 3 racks of pork spare ribs. So you can either do pork spare ribs or baby back ribs. I like doing the spare ribs a little bit more over the baby backs. The spare ribs are more fatty, whereas the baby backs have more meat to them, but they're also more likely to dry out or overcook on the grill. So I like doing spare ribs, but try both and see what you like better. So let's take these guys out of the packaging here first. Oh yeah, look at that. 3 meaty racks of ribs, and there's a bunch of different ways you can make ribs, and people have their kind of go-to recipes and styles and methods. So I will show you mine, which developed over the last couple of years of cooking ribs, where it's pretty simple, easy to replicate, and they really come out delicious. So just like all other times, I'm gonna start by patting these guys dry. I'll go 1 rack at a time to show you guys exactly how I like to trim them. Spare ribs have flat bones, so they have that nice kind of a rectangular shape. If you do baby backs, they have those curved bones, so these will cook a little bit more evenly. They do have that membrane on the back. I'm gonna talk about this here in just a minute, but otherwise, straight from the packaging, they are looking pretty nice. What I like to do whenever I make ribs is I like to trim off the end pieces. So you have this nice kind of center section, and then it tapers down here on both sides. So these edge pieces tend to overcook if I leave this rack whole. So we'll start by flipping it upside down, and then you can see it's kind of even up until like this point here. So just take your knife, and then we'll cut this edge piece off. And this is still really good meat, so I'm going to cook this alongside this rack, except I'm going to pull this off sooner so it doesn't overcook. And then same thing on this side after the second bone. Okay, so now we're left with this nicely shaped rectangular rack of spare ribs. Sometimes there's little edge pieces that stick out, so you can trim them off too. Anytime you're kind of doing this low and slow cooking, anything that sticks out will most likely burn, so might as well just trim it off. So you have this nice final presentation. This little fatty piece on top is fine. So yeah, this is kind of what I'm going for when I trim. Now, let's talk about the membrane. Up until maybe 2 years ago, I used to always remove the membrane from my ribs whenever I made them, and I only did that because that's kind of what you're told to do. You have to remove the membrane so the ribs get more flavorful, more tender. And then about 2 years ago, I left the membrane on. I think I was just kind of rushing through my cook, and I cooked them with the membrane on, and honestly, they turned out great. There was no downside of leaving the membrane on. They were not any less tender or any less flavorful than when I made them without the membrane. So from that point on, I just leave the membrane on and the ribs come out great. Honestly, do what you want. If you want to remove it, remove it. If you want to leave it on, leave it on. You can also kind of just score the membrane too sometimes, so really up to you. But from now on, I leave the membrane on, and I have no issues with my ribs. After your ribs are trimmed, we can start on the seasoning process. And again, I keep it pretty simple. We're gonna use a little yellow mustard for the binder. Now, or you can't taste it, it just helps the seasoning stick. You can also use hot sauce, Worcestershire, really anything here will work. So we'll go meat side or bone side first, and then just spread that out. You don't need a lot, just a thin layer like this works. For the seasoning, I'm going with a mix of my all-purpose rub and my soon-to-be released sweet barbecue seasoning. I love sweet ribs, so this is the perfect mix when making these barbecue ribs. So starting on the bone side, we'll go with a even coating of our AP rub, and then just press that in. I don't like to kind of smear that around because then it tends to clump up. And now we're gonna go just a little bit of the sweet rub. I'm gonna do more on the meaty side. So, okay, this side's looking good. So now I'm gonna pick this up, shake off any excess, and flip these guys over. And we'll repeat the process on the meat side. There we go. So on the meat side, we're gonna go a little bit heavier with the rub, since this is the nicer presentation side, and the meaty side where you get more of your meat and flavor, we're gonna go a little bit heavier with the AP and with the sweet rub. Just a nice even coating. We're gonna get the edges here as well. After your ribs are seasoned, I like to just leave them out on the countertop at room temperature for about 20-30 minutes. The meat will start to sweat out and start to absorb that rub. It's already, you can see it's already getting kind of moist and tacky on the outside. So after 20 to 30 minutes, they're gonna go on the grill and we'll start the cooking process. For this cook, I'm using my extra large big green egg. It just makes it easier to fit all 3 racks and cook them super evenly. It's preheated, cruising at around 250 degrees, set up for indirect cooking. So let's get our ribs on and get them going. Gonna put the ribs directly on the grate. I also have my edge pieces that I trimmed off. So I seasoned these guys up and I'm just gonna put them right around the ribs, close the lid, and let these guys, let them cook. Ribs are on, so let's talk about my kind of cooking method for making these ribs on the grill. The most common way of doing ribs is the 3-2-1 method. If you're not familiar with that, it's basically 3 hours on the smoke in direct heat, 2 hours wrapped in foil to get them super tender, and then 1 hour out of the foil with barbecue sauce to get them nice and tacky. Now, that's a great way if you like your ribs fall off the bone, super tender, which is fine. I like my ribs to have a little bit more bite to them, have them be tender, but also have a little bit more bite so they don't just kind of fall apart. So I modify the 3-2-1 method where I do about 2 to 2.5 hours on the smoker as it is right now. I basically cook them long enough until the bones start to peek out. Then I'm gonna wrap them in foil with some butter, some honey, some brown sugar, add a little bit more sweetness, and I'll leave them wrapped for about an hour and a half. Now that's gonna get them nice and tender, but not really gonna fall apart or fall off the bone tender. Take them out of the foil, add our sauce, and leave them on for about 15 more minutes. Let that sauce get nice and tacky and our ribs will be done. So the total cook time at that kind of 250 to 275 range is going to be right around 3.5 to 4 hours. And a lot of it also depends on kind of the quality of your ribs, how thick they are. I'll show you kind of what to look for while they're on the grill to know kind of when to move on to the next step. It's been about an hour, so let's take a quick look at our ribs. I'm also going to rotate them. So I'm wearing these fabric glove liners underneath my nitrile gloves for a little more heat protection, but let's take a look and see how these guys are coming along. Whew, all right. So we've got our small edge pieces, nice color. See, they're still super nice and moist on the outside. If you check on your ribs and you see that they're starting to look a little dry, you can spritz them with a little apple cider vinegar, but these guys are nice and moist. So I'm gonna leave them as is. All I'm gonna do is just kind of rotate them. So I'm gonna take this piece, or this rack, put it on this side, put this guy here, maybe rotate it this way. As the heat is coming up on the sides of the plate set, I want to make sure that they cook evenly on all sides. So just rotate, okay, and otherwise we're looking pretty good. The bones are starting to peak, but they're still pretty far in there, so probably another hour and a half before we wrap them up. Close the lid and come back and check on them a little bit later. All right, ribs have been on for another hour and a half, just about, so they are ready to be wrapped. So I'm gonna prep my wrapping station, and then I'll show you guys how the ribs, or what the ribs are looking like. We got some heavy duty aluminum foil. For my wrap, I like to go with a couple pats of butter first. We're gonna add some brown sugar, just a handful, and then we'll go with a drizzle of honey right on our mixture. Oh yeah. All right, check this out. The bones are starting to peek out on the side. That bottom, that membrane is getting nice and crispy. So I'm gonna place them meat side down right in our butter, honey, and brown sugar mixture. Temp-wise, they're sitting right around 160, 170. I'm gonna go with another maybe 3 pats of butter right on top, brown sugar, and the honey. Now I'm gonna wrap these up, fold this over. Just like that, we got our nice little rib present. So I'm gonna wrap the other 2 racks. This is gonna go back on for an hour, and then we'll make our sauce and finish them off. While the ribs are finishing off, we can get started on our homemade barbecue sauce. It's going to be the same recipe as the last couple videos. Ketchup first, got some mustard next, little bit molasses, some of our brown sugar. And this full recipe, by the way, is on my website with all the exact measurements, so you guys can check that out. Little apple cider vinegar, couple dashes of Worcestershire. I'm also going to add a couple dashes of hot sauce, make it more of a sweet and spicy barbecue sauce. And then I'll season it with my AP rub to bring it all together. So this is gonna go inside on the stove over medium heat. I'm gonna bring this up to a simmer and then just cook this down for about 15 minutes. It's gonna thicken up and it'll go on the ribs at the end, and it's going to be delicious. All right, ribs have been on for about an hour, hour and a half in the wrap, so let's take them out, sauce them up, and finish them off. What I like to do is I'm gonna remove them from the grill. Let's open up our foil wrap. Now it's gonna have all this butter, honey, the brown sugar, so I'm gonna drain all this down just to keep things nice and clean. Give this rack a flip. Ooh, look at that. They are super tender, nice and jiggly. So now we're gonna go bone side down. I'm gonna roll up the sides here. Now this just makes it easier to put them on the grill and take them off after I add my barbecue sauce. Let's do the same thing with these other two racks. Oh, look at that. That is a nice looking rack of ribs. Next up, we've got our barbecue sauce. So this was simmering for about 15 minutes, thickened up nicely, and I'm just going to brush this on, get them nice and saucy. And I'm going to put this whole rack, all three racks, with the foil back on the grill just for about 10 minutes or so. So it's going to allow the sauce to tack up, get super sticky, and our ribs will be ready to go. Put these guys right back on. See, so the foil again just makes it easy to take them on, or put them on, and to remove them from the grill. Keeps all that grease and sauce right in this little foil boat. And our ribs are done. We stacked them up to take our thumbnail picture, and check these guys out. They are looking absolutely amazing. Let's just cut into this rack. So what I like to do is flip them upside down so we can see exactly where the bones are, and then we can cut right in between the bones. Beautiful color on the outside, super tender, nice and juicy. I'm not sure how well you can see that in the video, but let's just go for it. That is delicious. Oh yeah, look at this. Nice clean bone when I bite into them, but they still kind of hold up. They don't fall apart. That membrane is pretty much non-existent. These are some really good ribs. So again, kind of following my method, this sort of modified 3-2-1, where we just kind of cut the times down a little bit so they get super tender, but they don't fall apart, and you end up with these delicious ribs. So about 2 hours on the smoke, about an hour or so in the wrap, then about 15 minutes with barbecue sauce, and you're left with some absolutely amazing ribs. That's going to be it for this video. Thank you so much for watching. If you guys like what I'm doing, hit that subscribe button, hit that bell to get all the notifications, leave a comment, give it a thumbs up, and I will see you next time. My God. Well, some legit really good ribs.